Immersed is a series around music, health, wellness, and technology. Each show, we bring together a diverse array of perspectives, from artists and musicians to scientists and academics, forward-thinking technologists and community players, all together to explore how music and sound impacts our well-being. In this episode, we explore what creators are doing with the concept of sound education, how, where, and why they are being called to redefine traditional models of education through music and sound, and how this re-education of sorts impacts our well-being. We will begin the show with a panel chat with some incredibly lit-up individuals. This will be followed by a demo of AFRORACK's Soundsketch, and we will close with an exclusive AV performance by Montreal's Woulg. You are tuned into Immersed, brought to you by StudioFeed. Enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone. So I'm going to do a quick intro, and then we can get this party started. Very excited to have everyone with us here. Let's start with an introduction to this fantastic group. Maria Batlle, Santo Domingo, how are you? Can you hear us?
I'm good. How are you?
Great.
Guys? Good to be here.
Great. Just to go through the intros here. So Maria is a mixed media artist based in the Dominican Republic who has been exploring the benefits of music and arts in education with the deaf community since 2013. Maria, great to have you with us. Guice, founder and executive director of AFRORACK, an audio arts organization based in Chicago that provides children and young people of color access to modular synthesizers, sound design tools, and education. Great to have you with us, Aaron.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Daedelus, world-class musician, producer, performer, and now educator at the Berklee College of Music in Boston, also a founding member of the Immersed event series. Daedelus, great to have you in the mix, my friend.
Thank you very much for letting me. Appreciate it.
Wonderful. Lauren Segal is a co-founder of Give a Beat, a passionate activist and longtime member of the dance music community. Lauren launched Give a Beat in 2014, an organization with a mission to reduce the harmful effects of incarceration through music production, DJing, and other education programs that will transform individuals and inspire communities to take action. Lauren, great to see you again. How are you? Last but not least, okay, right on. Good to have you in the mix. Woulg, last but not least, Montreal-based musician, new media artist, sound designer, and educator. In addition to being a next-level artist, Woulg's passion for education and open-door philosophy to music and production sharing has him a favorite among aspiring and ventured producers alike. Stay tuned for a killer exclusive AV performance at the end of this show. Everyone, great to have you here. Wanted to kick it off with just a little bit of a description on what you guys are up to, and then we can dig into some of the opportunities and challenges associated with this idea of advancing music education in our society. So, Maria, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your project, which we've been working with you for a while, and we're super excited to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're up to?
Yeah, thank you so much, John, for having me here. Well, we started in 2013, as you said, working with deaf students, working together with them, exploring sound, exploring music with SUBPAC. And we've been doing that ever since. It's been quite amazing because it has been like that project, which is about music. It has been a bridge to make social change happen for the deaf community. So that has been very powerful to work together with the SUBPAC team.
Great. And we'll be talking a lot about the opportunities that you see ahead and some of the challenges as well, Maria. Aaron, maybe you can tell us a little bit about, in your words, what you're up to.
Absolutely. So, as you said before, AFRORACK, we're teaching young Black and Brown children how to approach modular synthesis and sound design. And we're really expanding that idea with actually having like in our inventors workshops, we're teaching them how to code, teaching them how to read schematics. And a lot of that kind of came together, with us being in COVID and everything like that. We've also been stretching our arms into the inventor space ourselves. We created a system that is that creates accessibility. It's an accessible synthesizer for all types of learners called the Soundsketch. So we're really proud about that. So those are just a couple of things we're working on right now.
Right on. Really exciting. Daedalus, Alfred, new beginnings with you in Boston. Can you tell us a little bit about your educational journey, where you're at?
Absolutely. For the longest time, I was just a working musician and was invited by Berklee to participate in their EDI, what stands for Electronic Digital Instrument Program. And what they're effectively doing is try to invent pedagogy around electronic music performance. This doesn't seem like it would be super unassailable, and yet since there's so little been written about and kind of critically looked at, you see these kind of challenges based in maybe trad music theory and other aspects of the academic environment being used against the kind of freedom and the roots of electronic music. So part of my mission at the school is to try to undo some of the kind of conservative thinking around what electronic music holds, and especially, like I mentioned, the roots of, and kind of pay proper dividend to the people who invented this culture and we're all standing on the backs of. So very specific mission,
well
but
exciting.
Yeah, I feel a part of it. So yeah.
Super exciting. Woulg, thanks for joining us from Montreal. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're up to on the educational side of things?
Yep. So I do one-on-one lessons, and they really kind of span the whole gamut from kind of production, sound design, some Max programming stuff, all the way to sometimes I get into sort of like dealing with emotions that come up around music and music careers and stuff. So there's this interesting kind of free space with the students to explore all sorts of things. And then I also make YouTube videos, and I'm trying to kind of really dig into the kind of core of like how electronic music stuff works. So it's going slowly, but it's going.
Hear really great things. Super excited to have you here. Thanks a lot, Woulg. Lauren, can you tell us a little bit about what you're up to? Super impactful stuff. Maybe in your own words, just introduce people to the Give a Beat project.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here. So we are a electronic music-based social justice organization. We were born. I was into the house music scene in San Francisco many years ago, and saw the power of people coming together, all different kinds of people, through music and having the sense of freedom and connection. And I was blown away. And I thought, how can we take this energy from the dance floor and really address social justice and real needs in our community? So I became committed to that mission for many years. And about 5 years ago, we launched Give a Beat. We started out by bringing electronic music production and DJing programs to youth. We worked in the juvenile halls and after-school programs. And then we started working in the prisons. We were contacted by the state of California, which was super validating, to bring our program into state prisons. So we began that program last 2 years ago, and then was off to a great start. And then COVID hit. So we've been able to continue our programs remarkably because the California Arts Council is awesome, and they wanted us to stay alive as an organization and continue to reach the folks inside. So we've been able to send homework packets, teaching electronic music and music history and theory. And so it's been amazing to be able to keep that going. But currently, what we're working on, which is so exciting, is we just launched a reentry program, and it's called On a New Track. And we're teaching electronic music production, DJing, related business and entrepreneurial skills. And that just kicked off 2 weeks ago. So these are folks in our program who anywhere being out for 8 months to 5 years, incredible group of resilient, passionate, creative people ready to change the world. And we want to be there to help them do that through music and pursue their creative career goals.
That's awesome, Lauren. Thanks for outlining that. I mean, why don't we riff into a little bit of the opportunities that you see, and then we can have an open discussion around some of the challenges that everyone's facing and what we can do to overcome them. But yeah, I mean, paint a picture of what you see the opportunities as here, Lauren.
It's interesting because the opportunities and challenges are kind of the same thing. We have mass incarceration. We have half the people in the United States have had a close family member who's been incarcerated. I mean, it's totally obscene. I mean, you just think about women alone. The rate of incarcerating women has increased 850% over the last 30 years.
Wow.
I have to paint that picture to talk about when you talk about the challenges and how much generational trauma has happened because of the prison system, how much trauma existed before, and then people are re-traumatized. I mean, it's insanity. It's a little bit of an emotional day for me because I have a personal friend that was so close to parole, and because of politics and needing to build more prisons, he's getting lost in the mix and being set back. And we can talk about that maybe more later. But I'll say that I don't think there's anybody here that is surprised, doesn't understand how bad the system is. And from everywhere we've witnessed the murder of George Floyd, all the way to, it starts there. I mean, starts way before that. But the whole system, from police brutality to these ridiculously long sentences that people get, to then when they finally get out, the enormous barriers they face. So when I say the challenges and opportunities, I think there's an awareness going on right now. There's so many ways for people to get engaged. Now is the time for us to have radical change for the system. Okay, people are open. Let's not let this moment stop. We saw it with COVID. We saw it with the response to George Floyd. And let's take this moment and really rally people together and do what we can. So I will say specifically, the folks who get through this, survive prison, are folks for us to invest in, because they have survived this. That we have so much to learn about the resilience and like what a human can overcome. It's incredible. So the opportunity is to support folks when they get folks out of prison, support folks when they get out, and for the betterment of the entire society, and not to mention justice. I mean, it's just some absurd statistics there. Absolutely. We'll dig into that a little bit more shortly. Aaron, on your end, you're obviously changing a lot of lives, exposing kids to technology and music. What are some of the bigger scale opportunities that you're seeing with some of the work that you're doing?
Specifically to COVID, or just in generally?
I would say generally. I mean, you could take it specific to COVID, but I think, feel free to riff into generally speaking as well.
Yeah, I mean, the opportunities are there. We're really, there's a lot of things that we like to focus on. One thing that stands out is helping to create better, healthier relationships with technology for Black and Brown people. I think that one thing that a lot of people overlook is there's this idea that expense and how we treat and how we relate to our technology, right? So if something's expensive, like an expensive iPhone or a product in the house, then that child won't necessarily be able to have a healthy relationship with that. It's like, get away from that. Do you know how much that cost? So it's all these little things that are kind of ingrained where we don't get that opportunity to have, to be curious. We don't get an opportunity to have a healthy relationship with technology. So that's one thing. There's technology justice as well. That's the idea surrounding, COVID pretty much exposed that, all internet signals were not created equal. And a lot of the neighborhoods that I was teaching in, I would actually kind of joke around with a friend and say, hey, every time I come in this neighborhood, I get no bars on my phone, like the internet is slow. Well, that's an issue because, we don't have the same access. And again, trying to break, the poverty loop, by creating new opportunities in technology. We don't see enough Black and Brown people or even women on the other side of the music manufacturing industry. So, we see them playing it. I mean, you could see tons of Black people, playing cool instruments, but how many inventors do we have in this space? So we need to change this, and we're trying to create all these, different opportunities for them, so they can find a totally different way of, like I say, breaking the poverty cycle, seeing a new way, finding a way out, and you don't have to do something, that you're not supposed to be doing to, to get by. So, yeah.
Well said. Yeah, I mean, I think that especially now with more and more people creating in the home and accessing music technology, hopefully you're seeing an influx of partners, and if not, we can talk a little bit about what we can do to change that. Alfred, on your end, what are some of the opportunities you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, specifically to that idea of COVID in education, you have this great deal of a moment where students are forced to address their music hopes and dreams through a narrowing pipe. And especially if we all probably have had, formative experiences in a loud room where the music is communicated very directly, and that music, both in its just like its finite form of notes and harmony, but also in terms of its promise and possibility. There's a lot of freedom on the dance floor. There's a lot of community that's forged in this like identity space, and you take it all away. You take all those pieces off the table, and you can kind of see how the students, especially the students that I deal with this past year, have been felt adrift and not necessarily seeing a direct future. And I only can imagine downstream and amongst all these other organizations how much that ripple effect is happening. So I deal with very passionate and relatively well-to-do students who have made this core mission in life, but I am equally concerned about the people who are just supposed to be encountering music culture in the world and how that's been stolen from them, and how in 5 years, 10 years, we're going to have a generation who don't have that kind of relationship with the dance floor, don't have this kind of the power of music built in, and we have to kind of show them more clearly or define that. So a lot of the discussions I have with these students, my direct students, and then the others that I kind of deal with in a larger space, is just about how can we create an imagination that includes these people who didn't have it either from the get or are going to lose that opportunity going forward. Music is supposed to be Apollonian and Dionysian. There's this wild freedom, and then there's this kind of constructed creativity that happens, and we can balance that. Electronic music does that so well, the kind of steady BPM and then wild frequencies on top. Mm-hmm. It's really good at doing this. So I feel still passionate about those things, but we just have to reformat our kind of or readdress ourselves to the challenge at hand.
Yeah, you're certainly in a great place to lead the charge. So look forward to digging in a bit more. Greg, it's great to hear that you're connecting on a deep level with artists and creators. What are some of the opportunities you're seeing, and how you're putting forth music education?
First of all, I just want to say I'm like humbled to be on a panel with so many people doing like really important work, and makes me think like, the thing that I'm involved in is like kind of on a smaller scale, where the kind of challenges that I see with musicians a lot is we don't have a whole lot of good education around how to deal with our emotions, how to process our emotions and stuff. And this is a really important part of music. That's like part of what our job is as musicians, is to channel and handle this huge stream of emotions that goes through us. And so, I think I see like this kind of challenge that musicians are facing, where they're, they have to ride this wave of like ego and self-doubt and find themselves in the middle, so they feel good enough about themselves that they can push forward but still feel humble enough that they don't get all wrapped up in their head. There's tons of these little kind of details that we can kind of go into. Mm-hmm. And then on kind of to touch on some of the stuff that I can't remember who else said this, but about music performance and about affordability and stuff. Like that's one of the things that I talk with my students about as well, is like, it's like you don't need to go out and buy a huge ton of gear to give a really good performance or to make really good music. You just take the time to really learn how all these things work, and you can really flex them. One of my students, for example, has I can't remember what version of Ableton, but it's a quite limited version. So whenever we tackle some sound design thing that he's interested in, we always have to do it through like, we can only use simpler. So how do we do X, Y, Z, but we can only use this one synthesizer, or we can only use these sort of things. And these are the challenges that I love. Like I grew up, I started making music with a not a very good laptop, and I wrote it to the very end. And so those are the kind of the challenges I see. Is like changing people's perspective on what is possible and how they see themselves, sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think, we'll dig into this in a bit, but you sort of touched on some of the challenges with respect to artists, specifically in the isolation, let's say, over the last year, and how that impacts the creative process, and it being able to, work with other artists as you're doing one-on-one or in a group, to maybe, dig into some of these more personal and emotional challenges is very commendable. Nice one. Maria, on your end, opportunities, and then we can riff directly into maybe challenges and how we can overcome them, and maybe just open it up to everyone. I'm sure a lot of us share similar challenges in that regard. Maria.
Yeah, I want to make a side note. Since November, I've been working as a public servant with the mayor of the city, defending rights for people with disabilities. And ever since November, I've been so focused in work, solutions, talking to people. And it's so refreshing listening to you guys, like just talking to artists, man. It's like you guys are such a source of energy for me right now. I feel like I'm, getting some energy back. So I just, I'm so happy to be listening to you and the amazing things that you guys are doing. Opportunities, right? So the music project, which we started, as I said, almost 8 years ago, it totally used music as a tool for education. It all started for fun. I was just an artist exploring sound and music with deaf students. But then, organically, it happened that because music seemed something so impossible for the deaf community, it happened that it was the best idea that we could do. Giving access to music to a deaf child was like mind-blowing to them, and it was a lesson for them and for society. Like, music is for everyone, and you can feel music. And so there was all the opportunities in the world, and we started actually with a balloon. Because a balloon absorbs all the vibrations from music. You actually hold a balloon in the middle of a concert, and you can actually feel the different instruments. It's pretty mind-blowing, something so basic. And then when we tried the SUBPAC for the first time, which was the first SUBPAC ever, back in 2014, it was pretty beautiful because we only had 2 SUBPACs, and they were 72 deaf students. And that was pretty cool because if each one of them had a SUBPAC, then, we would have had all these individuals having pretty disconnected experiences. But because we only had 2 SUBPACs and we all had to share it, it was beautiful. So we had to come up with different experiences that created this sense of community around music and sound and experience by experiencing vibrations, such as we recorded the voice of 2 best friends, and then they would feel each other's voice. And that was pretty mind-blowing because they didn't know they had a voice, right? They're deaf, so they didn't know that's that thing that they did when they speak, when they made a sound had a place in the physical world. So that was pretty mind-blowing. And that's how we started, like really basic, like how does your mom's voice vibrates with this when you're wearing the SUBPAC. So that was pretty cool. And from there on, the opportunities were infinite, because thanks to this technology, we even went to a whale expedition, and it was the first whale expedition in the world that deaf students could actually feel the sound of the humpback whales singing live. I mean, live. It was a real concert by the whale.
Wow.
So, the opportunities were infinite.
That's also literally recording whales, like humpback whales, and feeling that sound that emanated from them to the deaf children that you were working with. That's awesome. Was someone going to?
I'm just going to chime in so briefly, just that it's incredible, the idea that the limitation of the situation afforded an opportunity. And I think so much of education seems like that deformation, right? Where it's like, okay, well, what's the limitation of the supplies? What's the way that the art can move, and how can we best leverage that? And it's such an amazing opportunity to then pay that forward to the composer, the producer. That's like the underpinnings entirely of the creative act. It's like how little to express the most. It's like paraphrase. It's so beautiful to hear that, like, working out in your situation, but also I think that's just the challenge that we're all carry on our backs so often, especially as creatives. It's like, how can we best express ourselves and express the world thusly in turn? Yeah.
Yeah, well said. Maria, I know you've faced a lot of challenges with sort of introducing these this curriculum and these ideas, through government or otherwise. What are some of your biggest barriers that you've come across?
I think the biggest one in the beginning was the attitude. Like, people would think, who cares about the deaf? I think the biggest one connected to attitude was when I met the deaf students. I met Luis Alberto, one of the deaf students, and his case in particular was very moving for me. And it was actually the story that changed my life completely and made me work on this ever since. And it was the fact that he was repeating the 7th grade over and over, not because he was a lazy student, but because he was deaf, he wouldn't be given access to high school. They would keep the deaf students up until the 7th grade, and that was it. And so that's how everything started. I started this music program, but it was always meant to shake society and do social change, and we actually did it. Luis Alberto went to the 8th grade, finished high school, and recently graduated from fine arts, and he became the first deaf student ever to graduate from fine arts in the Dominican Republic.
Hey, awesome.
And one of the few deaf students to graduate from college at all. So,
Wow.
it's all pretty connected. As I said earlier, the fact that you started with music. As a deaf person, you started exploring music and you realize, there's nothing I cannot do,
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
Having to run up against attitudes for sure. I'm sure you're dealing with that constantly, Maria, with what you're doing. Aaron, on your end, with the project that you've been heading up, what are some of the bigger challenges that you're seeing? And what can we do to overcome them in your mind?
Right. So, yeah, some of the challenges here currently have been communication as I mentioned before, with limited internet access and things like that, we've been switching our gears to more scripted, and we've been exploring different things. So most recently, we've been exploring animation. So we created a whole entire animation division to not to teach children modular synthesis, like say from a book or from an adult perspective, but to actually visualize how they experience sound and how they experience the technology. So we wanted to give that more value. We find that that is where the innovation is. You know what I'm saying? So like I always find it really cool when a kid just has like the wildest thoughts. Well, to me, it's the wildest new thoughts, because it's like, wow, I never thought of that. Because as you grow older in this field and you read more and you know the limitations of it, you know the reality of it, there's kind of this block where it doesn't allow you to go beyond. Like I know Lauren, when I was actually teaching with your students, I remember this actually really stuck out, was like a young girl asked like, hey, do the red cables give out more voltage than all the other cables? And of course this isn't dumb. I was like, wow, I never thought about that. So it's like all these little things that youth come up with that we think is super valuable to the innovation of the entire industry. So again, animation, we've been doing some NFTs. We've been doing, of course, like going with our program where we're teaching how to, build and produce synthesizers. So yeah, it's there's a whole world out there, and I don't want to say that COVID. So COVID, it's like it was a blessing in disguise, because it allowed us to slow down and reassess and look towards solving problems from afar. And it actually got us created opportunities for us to collaborate with people easier and anywhere in the world. So, I hate to say that it was a good thing, but you know what it is? We used it to our advantage to, create new opportunities. So with every challenge, it's really, it's how you look at it. And the whole thing is, that's one thing that we like to teach in our classes, especially one of the ideas behind modular synthesis is that if you change one thing, something amazing can happen, something unexpected can happen. So that's what I love about modular synthesis, and using the modular synthesizer as sort of this interface for change.
Well said. I mean, wouldn't it be great if we can integrate music education and music technology sort of through all aspects of education, whether it be science, history, math? This idea of running up against sort of traditional mindsets, Aaron, are you are you looking to kind of engage with, let's say, the traditional public school system? Or I'm just curious if you're
right.
Like
Yeah. So this was something that we were doing at the time, and there was a lot going on in Chicago at that time. But yeah, public schools. Our workshops and our strategy was more based around pop-ups. So we were actually going out into the community, because it's one thing to say accessibility, right? Accessibility price-wise, but what about, if there's what if no one in the family has a vehicle to get the child to the program? So we thought the definition of accessibility would be to go to the communities that needed us. So we were going to the communities, going to local communities. We were going to record stores, clothing stores, doing pop-ups wherever we needed to be. And again, like Lauren, we went to her. We were going to Detroit like on a weekly basis, going out there. Like it was just this thing that we felt, if we were really going to practice what we preach, we needed to take it to the people. And we're really proud about that. But again, like I said, COVID has us, we're stepping back and finding new and valuable ways. The Zoom wasn't a possibility. So, most people can get like things like YouTube and things like that. So the animation and the NFTs and some other really cool surprises that we have coming up this year. We haven't been quiet at all. We've been working very hard.
Awesome. Alfred, from your perspective, as someone that I think's had some exposure to let's say the traditional music education system, how are you seeing some of these new technologies, new opportunities sort of leverage to kind of overcome some of the traditional mindsets? And
yeah, I mean, I'm very proud to be a product of public education. Music school came early in my life. I don't know why, but they started in the second grade in my particular school district, but that was a one-off, right? And I think entirely because of that, many of my peers have gone on to incredible opportunities in the music industry or the adjacent industry. I went to school with Terrace Martin and Ben Wendell and some of these people who have really gone on to do wonderful things in the jazz community, as well as just kind of popular modern music, amongst others. And what I would say, though, is that my passion for sound made it so that I made choices in terms of higher education, what I thought was acceptable. And in the end, that was some limitations there. Like I thought there was some maybe safety in the kind of traditional instrumentation rather than kind of reach for these other sounding sources. I think we would all greatly benefit from expanding the idea of what is offered in music education, correct? It's like this idea that you kind of look and scan the popular the popular music of the day, the dial on the radio, and you hear every kind of sort of sound source and sound possible, but we're still on, effectively we're still in the kind of trad instruments of the orchestra or marching band, as if that's going to be that somehow kind of like reproduces itself in the thought patterns, right? Where it's like, this is the sanctioned government idea of what music should be. And then when you deviate from that, you are just out on a limb in your own. And so there is this concept that gets talked about a lot, which is YouTube University. This idea that people are seeking out information wherever they can find it, if they can get on YouTube or they can ask somebody, and it's full of misinformation and kind of bad thoughts, and maybe some of it is much more directed towards a pyramid scheme of like get rich quick and sell a beat kind of ideas. And it isn't sustaining in the industry. So we need to like build a foundational idea of wild music that starts at the first concept when people are still innocent and have their imaginations intact before that gets negated. And then the other side, I will say too, with electronic instruments, we keep on pulling from an idea of accessibility that kind of deals with the abled, even though I think we all have an idea where the differently abled might have, you can kind of imagine electronic music and electronic instruments would be open-ended ideas. We tend to kind of keep on reproducing this idea of 10 fingers, 2 ears. That is another thing that we can fight in terms of a concept. And I'm really happy that in the kind of specifically the electronic music space, we're seeing more instruments that are gestural. We're seeing more instruments that are not temporal in terms of non-temporal, like you see modular synths being a great example of this. And I just want to just kind of keep on pushing in all these directions, from a government level, from a systemic level, and then also from just enabling and empowering clever people to do incredible things with their gifts.
Well said. Yeah. And Aaron, that anecdote you gave about, with modular synthesis, you change one thing, look at all the things that can change after that. I mean, types of lessons you can teach with sort of newer technologies, and, it's very fascinating. And I mean, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I still think they're teaching kids in public schools the traditional, 300, 400-year-old instruments, and there's so much opportunity to expand. Lauren, I know you're up against many challenges with the project you're working on, not the least of which is some of the government, let's say, powers that have been changing things over time or keeping things the same. What can you sort of go through a little bit of how you're seeing the challenges and some things that we can do?
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to just mention, as I was listening to everyone, I made a couple notes of things that I'm so stimulated by the conversation, and there's so many different pieces to comment on and think about. So this might not answer your question, Don, at the moment. But
sure, yeah, totally.
Kind of going back a little bit and talking about, what Maria was saying. I mean, just what people can create through their limitations. I mean, this was echoed by everybody. I mean, when there's such limitations, how do you work around that and create it? the work that is the art that comes out of prison is absolutely mind-blowing. I mean, the creative, because it's mental survival, right? It's like, and I've learned about this thing recently. Has anyone ever heard of trench art? This is literally art created in trenches during war, you know, wow. and that's how you could survive in the trenches. And so I was so fascinated by that. And I actually learned it from one of our interns, who she's now working with the music, the poetry and the prose coming from one of my advisory board members, actually an artist, Russell Wardlow, who's incarcerated in Omaha. And his work is mind-blowing. And if you want to check it out, this is his own name. He created proseofacon.com, PROSE ofacon.com. But the essential need to put what he's going through into words, and how it's absolutely critical. And I would love to see a time where we could do more collaborations. You know, we could take his lyrics, his words as lyrics. I mean, he wants to sing and make music and rap and all of that. And just so many of the folks inside, and do cross collaborations where we could get the lyrics and what they envision visually, what the music might sound like if they can't make the music, and do that. Cause I think that would just be an incredible way of uplifting those voices and getting them heard. And just how inspiring that is, you know, when he knows that his words, that we're doing something with his creations, it sends ripple effects through the prison. So everybody around him feels that energy and the inspiration that he's having, that people care, they're listening to me, they care, they value my music. I'm here, they're hearing me. It changes the whole vibe all around, and it's really powerful stuff. So I would just love to see that type of thing grow, and those collaborations. I think it has just multiple benefits all around. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that. And then, just more challenges and opportunities, kind of switching gears here for the folks that are in our On a New Track program who are out. Just having so much drive and that kind of, resilience and, so much kind of evolution of the spirit and the mind and emotional evolution happens when someone has to overcome what happened to them and how they ended up in prison. And those skills, like given a little bit of support when someone gets out, can go such a long way. But these barriers are there to prevent it. You've got to check the box that you have a record, you can't get student loans, you can't go to college. There's just all these barriers. So it's up to us as voters, to help remove those barriers and educate other people, and open up those career pathways. So there's very specific things that we can do. So just drilling it down, we've got 8 students in our program who are graduating in May 15th. And our goal is that each and every one of those students who wants to pursue a career in music, and it could be anything. It could be a career in music, or it could be a hobby. They could have another job that pays the bills, but their hobby, that's where their creativity, and that's all, all they're searching for. But ultimately, we want to open up these pathways. We want to create partnerships with companies that will create a paid fellowship or job, and then create this mentoring, this kind of group mentoring around this individual, so that they can succeed, and everyone can succeed. That education happens on both sides. So yeah, that's where we're focused on right now. And I would just say one of the other challenges is, as any nonprofit knows, is fundraising. Is funding to do all of this stuff. So I would be remiss to not mention that. We are always looking for partners to do this, this type of investing in this type of social change, that could be permanent. We don't enough lip service. Like, let's get this work done. Let's shift power, and try and fix the damage that's been done for the last 400 years in the United States.
Lauren, very
Yes.
well said. I know a lot of people out there are wondering how one even engages the prison system in America to sort of start these types of programs. Can you shed a little bit of light on what that process even looks like? And, you know, are there different? Yeah, I mean, how do you even just approach the prison system and say, hey, we've got a program? Are there differences in different states? Like people just looking to start? Yeah.
I'm sorry, John. So other organizations that have music programs that might want to bring music into the prison.
I mean, just how did you go about navigating the prison system in general and introducing education? Like, that's a big leap for a lot of people. Like, that's a big leap for a lot of people. Like, are they receptive to these things? Is there? Yeah, go.
Yeah, I wouldn't say we got lucky, although I do feel lucky. That's it. But we started working with youth, like Aaron said. You know, Aaron, when he was referencing me, and that's the Give a Beat program. He worked with. He came in with Todd Strong, who's our program director, and we were teaching youth in East LA, right, Aaron? And so that was an after-school program. But we just started doing the work, and people found us. It's, again, I think we were just doing the right thing at the right time. It's unique, it's different. And somebody looking for music, mass incarceration, youth programs, DJing. I mean, literally, I think Googling is how some of the opportunities came our way, and specifically with the prison program. So we were already doing work with youth, and the amazing new program director took over the Transformative Arts program, which used to be called Arts and Corrections, which is part of the California Arts Council, which, again, I said is awesome, like really amazing. They have grants all the time, so people should go look at their website and look for grants. But they believe in the true transformative power of the arts to heal, and we of course we all witness that. We're all part of that. That's why we're here. Heal and transform and change our lives, and provide opportunities. So they found us. I mean, she Googled us, found us, and invited us to submit an RFP to bring our program into the prison. So yeah, that was a good day. That was a really good day.
Awesome.
I never knew. I knew when we started this thing, like, this feels really right. But it's super validating when, a government agency contacts you and says, bring your program into the prison. So some of the cool little other things that happen in the program is the camaraderie that's built. So this is talking about our prison program, which we dubbed, we call it the Prison Electronic Music Program. And I say electronic music in that it's electronically produced, but of course it's all genres. It's any genre that people want to get into. And what that's key. But we know how different people coming together through music is just so liberating. And that was one of the great benefits in the prison program, is that different people that maybe are in different gangs or in different, there's a lot of racial division in the prisons for all kinds of reasons, political reasons, and we won't get into all that. But it's so liberating for people to be in the same room and not have to with different types of people. And that comes up all the time, out on the yard. When we see somebody from a different group, we can feel that we can, signal to them and feel connected to them. And that's really powerful stuff. So, we just want to do much, much more of that. And then, that has benefits to the prison as a whole. You're reducing tension, you're reducing violence. So more of that. So back to your question is, how do people get involved? We're looking at where we can expand to other states that might welcome a program like ours. So we haven't really navigated that yet. But definitely for folks who are who want to get involved in our program, reach out. I mean, email me at lauren@giveabeat.org. We're expanding and growing, and there's opportunities in the near future for mentors and things like that. So
great, and we'll make sure we push out everyone's contacts and links to projects. They're all amazing things that you guys are working on. Truly, why don't we sort of switch into Maybe just a kind of a visualization exercise of, when people think of, well, what is it to have, let's say, an optimal music education curriculum or society or music-based education? What do they see, 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road? I mean, what kinds of things come to mind? So just a kind of a broad question. If we can envision these things, they can happen. So Aaron, I mean, just starting with you, what are some things that you see in your mind, sometime in the future that you think this is what it looks like to have a really optimized, music education system?
Right. I think it's really important to erase those limiting beliefs and the ideas that you need to be some sort of maybe some sort of virtuoso to touch these things, to touch these instruments. I remember back when I was in high school and I really wanted to learn MIDI, and I couldn't learn MIDI because I couldn't read music, but I really wanted to learn MIDI. So there were these barriers that were there. And also, speaking again to limiting beliefs, as we become older, we start to doubt ourselves and the relationship that we could have with, say, an instrument or learning a new language. You always hear people say, I could never do that now. I should have started that when I was younger. So, I definitely see this, there being more opportunities in the future where people are just invited to play. And there's no judgment, and there's no expectations for it to be perfect.
Yeah, that's super powerful. Super powerful stuff. Greg, from your end, where do you see some, what are some of the main attributes that you might see sometime in the future that you're like, yeah, that's where things need to go?
Okay. I have a lot of thoughts on this.
Yeah, go. Go for it.
So one of the things that kind of popped into my head while listening to everybody talk is this culture within electronic music where we think like, oh, this is the way a kick has to sound, or this is the way, you have to mix, or you have to master your song, or you have to send it to a mastering engineer, or you have to, there's so many of these like kind of rules that we make up about like how it has to be, and I would really love to see that kind of like open up some more. I also think like the other thing that I was thinking is like, I think we kind of in a different world, like everybody that I'm working with is like on a laptop, right? So it's kind of a different world, but one of the things that I think about a lot is that a laptop is an incredible instrument. Like for example, like you have a bunch of buttons that you can map. You can even, if you want to, assign them as like faders. Like if you go this way, that's like one fader or something. You've got your trackpad that you can use as like a multi-touch instrument. This is an incredible gestural controller. Inside the laptop, a lot of them have like tilt sensors and stuff. Like they're full of sensors. They've got cameras. We can use all of these things to create and control music. And I feel like there's this thing that drives me nuts in the kind of electronic music world of like, oh, you have to have this gear, you have to have this thing, or oh, is that the sound card you're using? No, and it's like it's this little pissing contest that I see so many people fall into, and I don't know. I think it's a lot of kind of missed opportunities that I mean, even if you get into like specific DAWs, like DAWs afford a certain type of thinking, right? They invite you to interact with it in a certain way, and trying to think of like, how do we use this DAW in a different way? That's one of the things that I love working with new students. Like they, for example, they don't know about something. I had one student who like didn't understand the concept of the grid at the beginning, and she was making the most precise, like intensely pristine minimal techno, totally off the grid.
Oh wow.
Which was so cool to see, like just totally seeing it a whole different way, right? So Yeah, and just to touch on the idea of like community and stuff, I think that's another really important thing, is like another thing that I would kind of like to see is like a reframing of the idea of genres. Like I think a lot of, especially, you know, I'm mostly working with experimental musicians, and a lot of us feel like, oh, I don't want to be put in a box, like I don't want to be part of a genre, and I'm trying to like help people see it in a slightly different way, where like a genre is like the clubhouse name for your group of friends, right? And if you want, you know, a rising tide lifts all boats, right? So we want all our friends to get more notoriety, get more visibility and stuff. And the best way to do that is to kind of figure out a little banner for ourselves and call ourselves that. And the same thing, it kind of, sorry, just to
go
off of that a little bit, is like, I've been thinking a lot about music theory as well, and how like a lot of the music theory that we learn is, you know, based on this old classical music that was made in a different way with different considerations. Even, for example, to try to apply, you know, jazz theory to electronic music, it's like there's different concerns with those two types of music. And so I've been trying to encourage my students to think a little bit about like, what is your music theory? What is the theory of your music? And because a lot of people feel like, oh, I can't do this because I don't know music. I don't know music theory or whatever. And so I'm trying to invite them to think about like, no, you have a theory of how you make your music, or how we make our music in our kind of communities. And it would be super, super beneficial if we started kind of putting that down, putting that, for example, you know, trying to explain what's the theory of how do you make this kind of experimental music, or that kind of dance music, or whatever. Because that, you know, these kind of things help to I mean, it sucks, and I wish it wasn't this way, but I do feel like those kind of things help to kind of like legitimize new types of music and new ways of thinking. Yeah, and then the last thing, like, I think that like that gear snobbery, and also the kind of snobbery about like, oh, this is how your track should be mixed or mastered, or those kind of things. I see that with some of my, like, it, and even, yeah, like the inbuilt, like, or the like sexism and racism in different electronic music communities. Like, I think sharing that view that like, no, you don't need XY gear, you don't need this, you don't need a mastering engineer, you don't need your song to sound like every other person's song. If it bangs, it bangs, and that's all there is to it. And I think like that kind of stuff helps to stop these kind of interactions that I like. For example, some of my female students have been like, oh, you know, when I play a show, what sound card should I get? Because when I play a show, all these guys come up to me and they're like, well, what are you using? What's this? Blah, blah, blah. And so I kind of go about it in two ways. One is like trying to break down those preconceived notions, but the other side of it is like trying to give them the confidence to tell those people to shut up, and giving them kind of keywords of like how to shut them up.
Yeah.
Because I've dealt with a lot of that kind of snobbery myself too. So there are these like tricks for getting those people to, if you'll excuse my language, to fuck off. So, and it's important to get those people to reconsider where they're going with that stuff. Anyways, so this is kind of some of my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, if I may, real quick, Alfred, if anyone, I encourage everyone to look up Woulg and how he performs with a laptop. It's one of the most powerful, beautiful, organic things, you know, you can imagine, and to reimagine how you use that very powerful tool as a way to perform is just super special. Thanks for sharing that.
Thanks.
We'll just really appreciate it. Alfred.
Just want to bring up two different things. One is in terms of the technology front, I really appreciate what you're talking about, Woulg, in terms of repurposing these non-traditional instruments into a format that allows for creativity. But we do have to acknowledge that much of the technology has been co-opted and utilized as surveillance, as capitalism. And is kind of been stolen from us, right? These tools that have the benign intention of what they can do, but then they've been repurposed as like a source of income for a social media company or tracking, and we undoing parts of that to allow the creativity to take center stage. And then on the other side, I have two names for those who are listening out there. One would be Trisha Rose, who wrote Black Noise, and another one is Philip Ewell, who specifically wrote Music Theory and the White Racial Frame. These are two really important scholars. So I love the fact that on the ground, we have this physical understanding of what sound can do. But from the academy and from the academic side, we don't really necessarily put too much criticism on it, right? We're like kind of like everyone buys into the system because we all benefit from it. But there are scholars out there that are doing really important work to directly deal with some of the issues that have been brought up on this panel. And it's worth echoing their names because there's some down pressure happening and some reimagining of what's possible. So we can have some resources later, right, John? We can kind of post some things.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We'll be
pushing through a bunch of that stuff. If I could pick your brain for a second, Alfred, I know we're sort of getting close to our end time, which is not always seems way too short. In addition to some of the names that you referenced, and what are some things that you see in an optimal music education system, whether it's 5, 10, 20 years down the road, where you're like, yeah, that's where it needs to go?
We already see in terms of the media environment, how integrated music is to the overall intrinsic value. If you want to talk from like a soundtrack and a commercialization of kind of music culture, that's always been existent, or at least since the invention of any media, sound has been an associated culture. Even if it was, pre-recorded music, there was some intrinsic value that was recognized. So to carry that with us, but then also I want to see music play a fundamental role in like the buzzword right now is NFTs. Like music should be absolutely part of this kind of culture. We've been experiencing scarcity in terms of music culture for the longest time in terms of vinyl and collectability. NFTs are an extension of that in both good and bad formats. Vinyl is a petroleum product. NFTs are using a great amount of electricity. And even if that's a bit of contention around that, we can see places to which music can kind of play a positive role in taking the kind of culture. So 5 years, 10 years, this is already happening, right? So 5 years to 10 years, I want to see this kind of complete integration, understanding of the power of sound culture, not just as an ancillary, not just as like, this is the last thought, but should be the primacy, the kind of centerpiece. And there's a reason too, we don't, our tribalism continues to be around a lot of sound culture, generally speaking. There's a lot of other factors that play to this, but we associate a lot of identity with, kind of the music you like, it's like a represented big tentpole that we tend to place. And so why not just re-embrace that and have fashion and aesthetics is informed by audio culture as it always has been, but just kind of keep that in mind as technology subsumes and kind of consumes us. Yeah.
Well said. Well said. A couple notes I'd like to make here before we pass the mic over to Maria and Lauren. One thing is, following this, we're going to have a great artist chat and exclusive AV performance by Woulg. Super excited to see that. And also, we're going to have a demo of the AFRORACK Soundsketch by Will Mitchell. Soundsketch is a synthesizer for learners of all abilities. And the other thing we like to do is thank some of our partners right now, presenting partner StudioFeed in collaboration with SUBPAC, Dublab, SonarWorks, community partners, Give a Beat, the Maria Batlle Foundation, AFRORACK, Music Motion, Bushido Studio, Creative. So we'll be sending out links to all these great organizations, and obviously, your guys' work is super inspiring to people. So thanks again for joining us as we keep it rolling here in sort of the last little chunk of this chat. Maria, as far as what you see as like a vision for where music education should be, whether it's in the near future or further down the road, what are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. I think the future is here, and it's in the north of Italy. There's a little town called Reggio Emilia, and I'm going to tell you about this little town and what they're doing. So after World War II, some of the mothers and fathers of this little town decided to create their own school. And they said, we will teach our kids about community, about working together, about collaboration. And this, like, we will teach this generation that, war is not the way. So I think this philosophy of Reggio Emilia is the way, is the future, because what they do is everything is connected to art. And there is, like, if you have a math teacher, you have an artist present working together with the math teacher. So everything is taught through the arts. Like, this shit is possible, man. It's happening. It's the future. So, it's all over the world. Like, you have it in the United States. We have it in the DR. You just have to Google, like, I'll send it to you guys. Reggio Emilia in California or Reggio Emilia in New York. And you'll find a school that is connected to the source. Something else beautiful about this philosophy is that the Reggio Emilia mayor, the city hall, it works together with the schools, not only with the budget, but like the parks, the streets, everything is connected to the schools, and the whole city becomes an experience of education for the students. Like, they go to the park, and today we're gonna have, science class at the park, and we're gonna, smell the leaves, and it's so beautiful, and everybody in the city knows about the schools, and the whole city moves around the school, and the homeworks of the kids are in the streets. Like, you see the actual homeworks of the kids, like, just on a wall in the street.
Murals,
So it's so beautiful, and it's so artistic. Everything is connected to art. So I think it's a pretty cool. Harvard is all over these guys. Like, Harvard is teaching about Reggio Emilia. And it's pretty interesting to see how they fit the Reggio Emilia philosophy into the academic world, because Reggio Emilia is against statistics. Like, they if you ask them, how is this impacting the people in Reggio Emilia in Italy, and they will be like, fuck statistics. Like, we don't believe in that shit. Like, it's the same thing to say, how is music impacting your life? Of course it's impacting your life. It's making it, really positive and beautiful. So they don't believe in all that. So I think we should all be inspired and motivated by what they're doing over there. I'll make sure to share.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, indeed. Very well said, Maria. That's awesome. And of course, you're inspiring so many people with what you're doing, and we'll make sure we share your guys' respective projects. Lauren, as far as what you're seeing, and of course, I guess the future is now, which is the theme here, I suppose. But what are some of your, what's your vision on how you see an optimal music education system and types of things that should be included?
Yeah, so my idea is pretty simple. It's nothing revolutionary. There should be music education in every school. Obviously, with kids. And, when I was growing up, we had music in our school, and then, people voted to save money on taxes, and all of our music programs were taken out of school. So, it's pretty basic. There needs to be music education in school, and in after school, kids have somewhere to go after school, so they're not getting in bored and getting into trouble. This need is played out. The results of not having this happening is played out in our prisons, and so many of the folks that I've met, their incarceration started when they were teenagers. It's you're talking people 16, 17, 18 years old, and they're 20, 30 years later, they're still there. And, I've heard this out of the mouths of folks saying, if they had had a program like Give a Beat when they were kids, they don't think they would have ended up in prison. So, and I'm not just saying Give a Beat, but actually music, would have, and And all I needed was an outlet, just an outlet for creative expression and that. So it's pretty simple. And music, and obviously with electronic music, electronically produced music, there's so many tools. It can be so accessible. There's no excuse to not have this accessible to everybody. And that's
it. Simple but powerful. There's no surprise that as society continues to get chiseled away and deteriorate, you're seeing alongside that the music education get pulled out and the value of music start to continue to deteriorate. But we're seeing some awesome stuff, maybe for another show, around how that's turning the corner with stuff like NFTs and a lot of the great work that you're doing. But we've reached our time limit here, unfortunately. So as usual, and I would say in particular with this discussion, I wish we could keep it going for another hour or two. But Aaron, Daedelus, Woulg, Maria, Lauren, you guys are changing a lot of lives, and you've inspired a lot of people in this discussion. So I just wanted to thank you guys for joining, and I know we'll continue to stay connected afterwards, and keep building a foundation for some awesome things to come. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, my name is Will, and I worked with Aaron from AFRORACK to design and build the first version of Soundsketch, a synthesizer for learners of all abilities. So I met Aaron when I reached out to AFRORACK to see if they needed any help with their workshops, as we're both based in Chicago. I'd had some experience with teaching electronic music to young people in an after-school setting when I was living in Milwaukee, and AFRORACK's unique modular-focused approach seemed like an ideal place to continue that work. Unfortunately, the pandemic put any such plans on hold, but Aaron and I were still able to find a creative way to work together. I designed a pair of modules as something of an interface experiment, and I was curious if they'd have any use in AFRORACK's future programming. I sent them to Aaron, but unbeknownst to me, he actually already had plans for a synthesizer where technical language doesn't present a barrier to entry. The modules I designed weren't exactly what he was looking for, but they were an important step in that direction, and so we had a longer conversation about his idea. Once I wrapped my head around it, the potential ramifications for learning and teaching synthesis started to take hold, and I signed on to do anything I could to make the idea into a reality. The process began in earnest when we had a conference call with Wes from STEM Modular. So Wes has spent years designing a modular synthesizer that is specifically friendly to beginners and encourages learning. As such, he was able to provide us with some extremely important insights and perspective, and we were able to build a foundation for making our design decisions on top of that perspective. So we're really appreciative of Wes's input early on in the process. We began designing the synthesizer by taking 3D models that I made of interface concepts and then getting Aaron's feedback on those. And so we were able to go back and forth and iterate until we had a design for the front end of the system that we were both happy with. I then went ahead and laid out the necessary circuits and did the PCBs so that we could build a real fully functioning prototype of the idea that we could play and draw on and see how this idea might actually work in reality. And thus far, it's been really encouraging. So we wanted to share where we're at with you and spend some time with the Soundsketch. Okay, so here is our first look at the Soundsketch. A couple notes about this particular version. So right now we're in between revisions, and so there are a few things that are going to change on the next version. First and foremost, what you're going to see in the future is a completely consistent, smooth drawing surface. So these screws will be either removed or countersunk, and then there will be a clear acrylic overlay that has cutouts for all of the UI components, but otherwise provides a completely smooth surface. Beyond that, there will be a couple tiny tweaks to the user interface, maybe removing a thing or two to make it a little bit more minimal. But with a little bit of imagination, this is pretty much what a player would be able to expect when they're using the instrument. So let's talk a little bit about the design approach here. So the main thing we tried to do is embed patterns in the placement of the parts on the instrument to kind of imply what the functionality of things might be. So what I mean by that is something like, say, these buttons. You press a button and you see that there's a response here. And so you can try changing things and seeing that you get a different response, right? So as it turns out, you can tap a signal from any of these points right next to the LEDs. And if you put a signal into this jack right here next to the button, it's actually going to serve the same purpose there. So what we're hoping here is that as students follow step-by-step tutorials, they're going to accumulate experience that will allow them to develop an actual intuitive sense of how they can create and change sound. And in the process, they might develop some, or at least get some practice with very base level cognitive skills such as pattern recognition or understanding cause and effect. And it seems to us like those are really useful skills that have applications far outside of just music making. So let's see how this might actually work in practice. So let's start out with kind of the quintessential first patch of the system. What we're going to do is we're going to connect the voice module to the brain module, as we call it, and then add a little bit of motion. So that is going to look a little something like this. You can make connections with shared colors, or maybe you can use a shape, or maybe you could use a number, like 1. So let's start putting this together. So what we have here is our main sound producer generator. Pardon any small intonation errors. And then this section over here creates a sort of aura or space around the sound. Let's follow on to the next connection. So this section down here is the sequence or the pattern generator. You can basically think of it as the part of the system that writes your score. Now, one very important thing to note here is that this is playable. It has controls that influence the spread of the pattern, how random it is, how often new notes come in, and the speed at which it moves through new notes. But since this is a digital module, it can actually be a programming curriculum for students to write their own generators, or they could use MIDI, for example, to send notes into the synthesizer from some external audio workstation. So this is very open-ended. This is just the simplest possible way that we could inject scores and notes and patterns into the system. So let's go ahead and finish up the patch here. So we can see how every time this LED turns blue, our sound opens up and the timbre gets really bright. So what's up with this button? Oh wait. So these seem to be fire related. And you could play with this for hours, I have, personally. Okay, so it's a new day and we're sitting down for a fresh patch at the Soundsketch. Today we're gonna do a frequency modulation patch, which is gonna allow us to get some more kind of extraterrestrial sounds. I'm going to mark the patch with both colors and numbers so that we can see an order for how to attach the patch cables. So the first thing we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll take the voice and we'll run it through this section of the utility module that will allow us to add dynamics to the sound, okay? And then we'll take the output of that section and we'll patch that over here into the brain. And then we'll take, very importantly, this section of the motion module and we'll put that into this special pitch control on the voice. This is gonna give us a sound that's really fun to play with. Then this right here will allow us to actually add our dynamics to the sound. This will add some rhythm to those dynamics. And finally, this is going to give me a fun button to play with. All right, let's check it out. See a light there, it's a good thing. This should give us sound. There it is. This is the fun one. Okay, so we're moving the pitch around, but as we spin this pitch around faster and faster and faster, new tones start to develop. So then we can actually go even further than this. Uh-oh, but it's okay. So that's what I meant when I said we could add dynamics to the sound. And this is what I mean when I say we can add rhythm to the dynamics. So now we've got something kind of crunchy and textural that we can just play with. And once again, we could go on for hours and hours and hours. Before I sign off, I wanted to take a little time to talk about some of our big picture educational goals for the project. So, synthesizers have been the driving force that has motivated me to study the STEM topics. Specifically, synth DIY has completely changed my relationship with technology. Technology has become something that I can understand, something that I can harness, and something that I can take control of. My phone is no longer a sort of magical black box. I can understand it as an embedded computer with attached peripherals, much like the digital synths that I've worked with in the past. So the question becomes, how can we inspire this type of curiosity in young people? And how can we provide them with the resources and the framework that will allow them to, go on their own self-guided journey of research into topics that interest them? And so, I think there are actually a lot of ways of doing that. So first and foremost is to, create a way of making the instrument engaging, right? And so part of our goal there was to make an instrument that's fully realized, that can make the type of music that young people might want to hear. And so, hopefully we can find ways of getting people to that point with the tutorials and different patches that we can provide. And then beyond that, think about the potential of visual design instruction. So as soon as someone is writing on this instrument, they're becoming a designer. And so we're really excited to, loop in with some folks who maybe have some experience with teaching art or visual design and see if they have any ideas. As I mentioned as well, there's really strong potential to do computer programming type curriculum based around the digital module or based around writing software that might, interface with the Soundsketch. And then finally, I think it's worth thinking about the possibility for practical electronics curriculum, right? So you can add some very, very simple circuits into the mix and really augment the functionality of the Soundsketch in a way that makes those simple circuits very meaningful. Those can then be used to teach basic electronics concepts. And frankly, I think that you could even teach young people computer-aided electronic design with their computer skills and get to a point where a classroom might actually be able to design its own device and learn about the process of how it's fabricated. So, these are just some of the ideas that have crossed our mind, and we're eager to see what else might come up. But mostly we just want to get some of these instruments in front of young people and see what works and what doesn't, what we might double down on in the future and what we might need to go back to the drawing board about. So that's really our goal right now, is to just, get some of these in a classroom setting. So thank you very much for your time and take care.
So hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning into Immersed. I am joined again by Woulg, Montreal-based music producer, sound designer, artist, educator, to name a few things. Hello again, Woulg.
Hello.
That was fun. That was fun to get you chatting about education. I don't know if everyone kind of knows that, you spent a good deal of your time doing that, sharing.
I felt those are some people with impressive CVs in there.
Yeah. Well, you know what?
It's really nice to hear what they had to say and see what they're doing, and it's super inspiring. I hope I can reach out to them afterwards and.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, it's the start of building a network, and the game plan of the Immersed series is kind of to pull in all the folks that we have on these shows and keep the conversations going and really build a network of people who are committed to, the advancement of music and sound and understand its opportunities to affect our well-being, make life better. But we're changing gears here because, I know you said you were with a powerful group of people, and you were, but I think when, if, people haven't seen or don't know you as an artist, when they check out what you can do, they'll recognize that you were in good company. There. And I just wanted to touch a little bit on that because, John alluded to some of the crazy stuff you do, with a laptop. And that's just, scratching the surface with some of your abilities. So I know you've prepared an exclusive AV performance for us. And I just wanted to touch in on your creative process around that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. So this set, I wanted to focus on the kind of the tool that I built for using the laptop. Keyboard and mouse as like an expressive tool, and then I also have a controller that I built that does tilt sensing, so I'm using that a little bit. And with the custom lighting thing that I built, so it's like a bunch of these LED strips, and they're controlled by the music and really tightly with the music. Everything in Ableton. So yeah, and the inspiration for this set was just to, have a soft moment.
Yes.
So get kind of, release and get into yourself.
Amazing.
You work through some difficult things and let it out.
Yeah, amazing. And that's always why we like to end these shows with a performance, because there's a lot of head energy. We're floating around with a lot of ideas. And so, again, music's ability to kind of bring us into our body and take us down to that great spot that we call home is amazing. Cool. Well, I won't keep you much longer, but normally I would ask, like, what's next? Like, where are you going next? Where are you performing next? And I don't know if that's, I guess it's from where I'm looking at you, but anything you want to plug, anything up and coming that we can keep an eye out?
Well, yeah, I'm still working on this bad boy.
Whoa.
This is one of the cellos from the project I'm doing with Montreal Life Support. And so he built these kind of robotic appendages to play the cello.
Wow.
And I am working on the AI to get because the idea is to have an AI that plays the cello. So
why not?
We did V1 last year, I believe, was the kind of premiere of V1, and we have been working on it super hard this last year. Everything on the cello in terms of the mechanical stuff has been super upgraded. The AI stuff has like been torn down and rebuilt a couple times now.
Wow.
So that's something to kind of look out for on the horizon. In the meantime, I'm still working on that series that I mentioned, which is called How Does This Shit Work? AKA Seizing the Means of Music Production.
Amazing. So, we could have renamed the show that, I think.
Yeah. So that stuff, and of course, hit me up for lessons. That's what I'm doing most of the time these days.
That's it. Awesome. Well, and we'll make sure that people have your contact information for that as well. Thank you so much for your contribution, both to the panel and to this performance. We really appreciate you. You're tuned into Immersed. You can check us out at projectimmersed.org. Stay with us. Coming up next, Woulg. Thanks.
What is can stop? What is can stop?
Sound.